Another newsworthy day in the Duke basketball world. Super excited. Mark Mitchell is coming back. Year two. We're running it back with a lot of Duke Blue Devils. We're going to discuss that on today's episode here of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson, and it's so great to have you here with us on this Thursday, March 30th, 2023. Mark Mitchell made the decision to return to Duke for his sophomore season. He posted a video on social media talking about how thrilled he was to be a part of a championship team, hanging a banner in Cameron Indoor Stadium, honoring that ACC tournament run that Duke had, but wanting more. So Mitchell is coming back next season. We're going to discuss that on today's show with my good pal Josh Smith from the Devils Den podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. I'm on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. And also subscribe to us on YouTube to watch the show daily each and every day. Without further ado, let me bring on my good pal Josh Smith, who joins us here on the program. And Josh, we're at the part of the year that the tournament run has ended much sooner than we were hoping for. This time last year, we were at Final Four Media Day for Duke, getting ready for the big event. And now here we are talking about announcements that players are making in regards to next year.
Yeah, a little bittersweet on that note, right? But I think at least, we've already got two in the bag now coming back. So that's a huge – it's something to look forward to. It's so hard to win it all. So just having some continuity, having some guys, like I personally just went and brought Proctor's Brotherhood shirt over there. So I highly recommend you guys go support these players that are coming back. Exciting time, right? Off season's the best time of the year. Everyone's excited. Everyone's optimistic.
I love the off season to have these big conversations. We're going to have these conversations very, very frequently. That's what we got to do. And there are no games to discuss. So Mark Mitchell makes the decision. He's going to come back for his sophomore season. I think a lot of people felt like ultimately this is where he would wind up, that he would in fact make this decision to come back.
Yeah, I think really Mark's an interesting guy because he's kind of been slept on, even like in the high school rankings. Now, granted, he's a 5-star kid, right? But he had gotten injured, and it seemed like they kind of just slept on him a little bit. And it looks like the draft, he just never really got a ton of draft buzz early on. Maybe that's just the way that he plays. He's a smart player. He's not going to take a ton of shots. He's not going to hurt you, basically. But I'm, for one, I'm ecstatic to have him back. I mean, what he does defensively on the wings, I mean, just big time to get a kid like that to come back.
Yeah, it feels like we talk about Mark Mitchell and obviously the NBA prospects that Duke has had over the last several seasons. Really, really impressive. And anytime he's been on the floor, I would feel like people were paying attention to some of the other guys on the Duke team and not necessarily Mark Mitchell. That goes back to even in high school. I know that being at Sunrise Christian, Grady Dick, who had an incredible freshman year for Kansas this past season, was Mark's high school teammate. Everyone's talking about what Grady's doing and not as much love for Mark Mitchell. It felt as though there were moments where he was underappreciated almost this year. And then come tournament time, he's not available for a game. And boy, that's the one big thing we kept talking about.
Yeah. And I mean, and I don't know, it hasn't really came out whether or not that would have been his primary matchup, but you got to think he would have spent a lot of time guarding that kid. Guy goes for 27 points, hits 3 threes. He's never done that in his college career.
Oh, yeah.
You got to think Mark makes a difference there, right?
Yeah, we had a big Olivier discussion after the fact with that kind of once-in-a-lifetime performance he put together against Duke. Still stings a little bit, but nonetheless, we're seeing Mark Mitchell back for another season. How would you, though, summarize what he was able to accomplish as a freshman? I know we talk about his defensive ability that really was impressive for Mitchell. There was the number about Duke only losing one game the entire year when Mark Mitchell scored in double figures, right? Mm-hmm. So if he could get to that 10-point plateau, Duke was great offensively when he was factoring in. What else stands out to you about his freshman campaign?
His nickname's Easy, right? And I think that really describes it in terms of he can play in any lineup. You're not going to maybe notice him at times, but he's the glue that kind of makes it stick, right? You want to go big, he can play the 3 for you. You want to go small, he can be a 4 or a small ball 5 for you and just wreak havoc. And it's really hard to find a guy that can guard 1 through 5, that can actually guard 1 through 5. You hear that, people talk about it. Sometimes it doesn't really work. Mitchell can actually guard 1 through 5. He can switch. He can do whatever you need him to do. And like I said, he's not going to hurt you. He's not going to take 15, 20 shots a game. That's not his game. He's going to take smart shots. He's going to take good shots. He doesn't need the ball to make an impact. I just think if you're trying to build a team, I look at a guy like that, and that's who I want. I don't have to run stuff for him. I don't have to put the ball in his hands. He just plays. Just old school Duke kind of guy to me when I think of like some of those early 90s teams, those late 90s wings that we just had come through the program. He's just a staple of one of those prototypical. Kay would have loved this kid. I mean, just loved this kid.
25 is coming back. Mark Mitchell is returning to Duke for his sophomore season. Let's keep talking about that after our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Our show today is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and there's no place to get in on the action than FanDuel. This is America's #1 sports book. Final Four coming up this weekend. Right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if that first bet doesn't cash in. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net. A thrilling Final Four is in front of us. We've got, of course, UConn taking on Miami. We've got a fun matchup between Florida Atlantic and San Diego State. Who's going to win it all? You can make those bets at FanDuel. It's all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Locked On Blue Devils here today. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Smith from the Devil's Den podcast, talking a little bit about that Final Four briefly. I got to hear from you. What do you think happens this weekend? We mentioned this time last year, Duke's preparing for a Final Four that has the blue bloods of blue bloods represented in the tournament last season. And now we've got a bunch of kind of outliers out there with the Final Four.
It's been a wild tournament, and I've really enjoyed it. I'm a little bit concerned about the ratings coming in. I'm sure some of the higher ups are probably a little concerned about that. But it's not. You still have quality. I mean, watching Florida Atlantic play, they run some great stuff. Now, San Diego State, they want to kind of muck it up a little bit. But personally, for me, that Miami UConn game is just, I'm really excited about that. I'm pulling for Miami. I know some Duke fans, we may or may not like Miami. I've never really felt the animosity towards those guys. A lot of respect for Larinaga and the way that they play. They're really fun to watch. They get up and down, those guards that they have. I'm personally pulling for them, but that's also just because I don't want UConn to tie us. So I want UConn. All respect to Hurley and those boys, but pulling for Miami to do something there.
No doubt about that. Super excited to see what this tournament happens and how it unfolds and that sort of thing. And for Larinaga to be on that run, UConn has been super exciting, as you said. I don't know what's going to happen. I will definitely. The ratings might not be great all across the place, but I'll certainly be tuned in to the Final Four. So thinking about next year's squad, again, the news of the day, Mark Mitchell has decided to return for his sophomore season. You look at what he was able to do offensively for this Duke team. Again, when he was scoring, Duke was winning, bottom line. And what comes with scoring, you want to look at the outside shots. The three-point percentage, there was the first probably 3 quarters of the year where Mark Mitchell was the most reliable three-point shooter percentage-wise that this Duke team has. Now, he is left-handed, so I'm automatically going to be biased towards him as a lefty myself. However, it wasn't the most beautiful shot to watch from Mitchell, kind of a line drive in there every time, but it was going down. So I think if that three-point shot can continue to improve for Mark Mitchell, we're going to see a really, really confident and a big scoring threat for Duke coming back next year.
Yeah, and he knows where his money's at. He's not taking a bunch of threes. I'd like to see him take a little bit more, actually. But when he's in those corners, man, he's money out there. And you're right. He was at like 42, 43%. I think he finished 35, 36%, somewhere around in that range. You'd like to see him be able to take a little bit more. Now he's playing the 3, so that kind of makes it a little bit where you want some spacing there. I would anticipate, though, this summer he's just going to be getting a ton of shots up. I mean, a lot of shots up because, Proctor's going to be able to find these guys. You talked about Proctor earlier already. Just really excited to have 2 sophomores come back. Hopefully we get 1 or 2 more here. But speaking of Mark, I just think he's going to be part of this engine, and you can just play him with any lineup. You can, like I said, that's his real value to me, is you just stick him in there and he makes good things happen. So I'm sure John and the staff are really excited about it. Anytime you get these kind of kids to come back, it sets a precedent. And I think, JJ, I'd be curious for you too, there had been sort of a culture of one and done, to where we would not that when you lose the Zions, the RJ Barretts, those guys of the world, I don't think anyone blinks an eye, but we were really desperately, how do we get a Trevor Keels to come back? How do we get a Frank Jackson to come back? How do we retain a DJ Stewart? Some of these guys that were fringe, maybe not quite ready to make that leap. I'm hoping that this signals a little bit of that trend of, if you're on that kind of late first, second round, come on back. Let's use NIL. Let's develop one more year. I'm all in on that approach, and I'm hoping that this is going to be something that Shire can keep going with.
I think there has been a lot of chatter like that in terms of, hey, guys, that, there is opportunity for you to come back and continue to improve your stock here. And you almost wonder, are those players that we mentioned, is some like Trevor Keels or Frank Jackson, DJ Stewart being used as an example now? Who knows if because you look at what they've been able to do, none of those guys are really making an impact at the NBA level. And at the time when they were making this decision, we were questioning the decision that they were making going ahead and starting their professional career. So you almost wonder, you're right, Josh, is Coach Shire using this as like, hey, you could go off to the NBA and not quite get to that NBA level, and then you're playing in the G League, and who's really watching the G League? Or you can keep playing for Duke. People know who you are, and not to mention the NIL of it all that we are in this day and age when you can get paid to be a student athlete.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish it was still around a lot earlier, right? We might could have gotten some of those guys to start, because our freshmen already, the freshman class coming in, I know you're not talking about that today, but they're already securing multiple NIL deals. So shouts to Rachel Baker, shouts to the staff and everything that they got going on. I'm sure there's a lot of logistical stuff behind the scenes, but it at least starts to show me that we're trying to figure this thing out, because you just have to, like it or not. It's just the new sport that we live in now. So hopefully we can continue to take advantage of it.
Someone can dig through the Locked On Blue Devils archives and hear a podcast I did probably a year and a half ago or so, talking about Jared McCain signing an NIL deal with Jared's Jewelers as a junior in high school. I mean, that guy has clearly found a market, already set himself up for a money-making opportunity, and partnering with Duke is certainly going to help his brand. So, it's a great place to be, and hopefully you're right, more sophomores will make that decision. 25 coming back for Duke. Mark Mitchell, of course, wore jersey number 25. It's up in the rafters. Art Heyman's jersey that was retired. Our good pal Steve Wiseman from the Raleigh News and Observer had a good story about Mark Mitchell getting permission to wear that number, although Heyman, not living, had to go speak with distant relatives to get that permission. I know Marvin Bagley III had a similar story with Danny Ferry and 35. That's the other thing I'm always curious about. I'm a big jersey number guy, Josh. So with all these new guys coming in and old players leaving, jersey numbers are like 0 will now be available next year.
Right.
If someone wants to throw that on their back.
Yeah. The whole using the retired jersey is a little kind of foreign to me. I kind of leaned, I think Grant said, if you can go up there and get it, you can wear it, kind of a little, that kind of, and we don't, because we don't retire a ton. We're not a school that no shots at anybody, but it's very hard and difficult to get your jersey retired here. Right. So there's plenty of numbers to choose from. But some of that's just the way college, you can't wear 6, you can't wear 7, some of those things. So, if you're going to go take one down, then I'd like you to put something up there. That's my kind of rule. If you take something from the rafters, you better be putting something back up there.
That's a good rule. Yeah, let's put that into place. Let's write that down. Locked On Blue Devils here today on this Thursday. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Smith from the Devil's Den podcast. We continue our conversation here in just one moment. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Blue Devils today and making us your first listen and first watch each and every day. For your second listen, please make sure you go check out our brand new podcast. It's Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court. Plus, you can hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. It's Locked On College Basketball. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Moving forward here on today's episode of the program, again, my pal Josh Smith from the Devil's Den podcast is here with me. I want to hear from you, though. We saw two decisions prior to Mark Mitchell here this week. Tyrese Proctor comes back. Tariq Whitehead does declare for the NBA draft. What'd you make of those decisions?
Yeah, I don't think there's a ton of shock there. I was getting a little nervous about Tyrese just because that's kind of just been my guy all year. Obviously being the point guard, kind of the most important position on the floor. So to get that one back was huge. And now I'm hoping that we get a little bit more. It sucks for Tariq. That's not the season that he wanted to have. The injuries kind of piled up on him. But he gave us what he could. He shot 42% from three, which I would not have expected that coming in. Never got to see some of the burst, some of the athleticism. But this is a guy who's been projected as a first-round pick for 2 or 3 years now. I mean, NIL money is great, but when you're first round or that if you're even sniffing lottery, that's $9 to $10 million guaranteed over 3 years. You're not making, most guys aren't going to be able to make that in 2 or 3 years off NIL. Some can, the Bronny James stuff. I see where he's in the $7 million range. That's kind of outlier stuff though, right? Like 10 million guaranteed. You give me that, I quit my job today. Right. So no hard feelings on that end. So hopefully he gets in a good landing spot.
Yeah, I certainly do hope so as well. I know that obviously you look at what he was able to do in high school, talking about Tariq Whitehead. It felt like we saw him attacking the rim more. The ball was in his hands a hell of a lot more. We saw him as a playmaker. And at Duke, it felt like he was kind of a spot-up shooter. And kudos to him because he was knocking down shots. I mean, 42.9% as a freshman in college is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that will translate to the next level. I'm just excited to see what that looks like with him being more of a playmaker in the future. Again, if that's in the cards for Tariq Whitehead.
Yeah. Get healthy, right? Get healthy.
What it takes.
All that stuff back, get the mental aspect of the game back. And, he's got all the tools. You saw it at times, some of the stuff that step back three, that's an NBA move, that mid-range jump, the ability to get where he wants to. He'll be fine, I think. He'll be fine. Would have loved to see him as a sophomore, but, we got a big class coming in. And, I think was he the first guy that committed to John too?
Filipowski was.
Filipowski was the first,
and then
he was the first, I guess, big time,
yes.
Because Kyle he really kind of shot up the rankings. So
yes.
I think Tariq, doing that gives John a lot of credibility year one. You get a top 5 guy committed. And so, go do your thing, man. Go do your thing.
Yeah. Hey, more power to you. Absolutely. So 3 decisions are down. Then we've got, of course, Tariq Whitehead, Tyrese Proctor, Mark Mitchell have all made their decisions. In the Duke basketball world, we're waiting for 3 more decisions now. Derek Lively II, Kyle Filipowski, and then the junior captain, Jeremy Roach. What are you hearing, Josh? What do you think could happen here?
Yeah, Duke likes to give guys their day and their moment. And so we've seen this the last several years.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people keep up with it, but typically you're going to get one a day or one every other day. They like to kind of allow that, a guy to shine for a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow we might hear something. With it being Friday. Maybe they wait till Monday. I expect Derek Lively to announce he's going to grade well. I think he's getting Watto buzz. Filipowski's the one I think that really has a decision to make. He's getting some of that lottery buzz, but he's talked different just since he's been recruited here. He's talked about this being a multiple year thing. He's talked about wanting to win some hardware, wanting to put something in the rafter. He chose 34 John. I'd love for him to come back, but I would certainly understand that once you're sniffing that lotto money again, 10 mil guaranteed, he's got a decision to make. I think that if he did come back, they're saying next year's a little bit of a weaker draft. Maybe he kind of secures that lottery spot. So I'll lean to, if I had to guess, I'd say Lively declares, Flip comes back. Roach is the wild card. He's got 2 years of eligibility still if he wants to use it now because of the COVID year. He is set to graduate this year, and that was kind of the plan of,
Right.
maybe he's just going to graduate and just move on with life, right? Just whatever's in the next chapter for him, whether that's professional ball or whatever other adventure he wants to get into. But I'm hearing that here the last kind of week or so that's kind of shifted a little bit. And now he's really weighing this out of, do I want to come back? Do I want to do this again? So I don't know. I think it might be a little bit for Jeremy. I think that's a bigger decision just in terms of family stuff, and already kind of maybe had his mind leaning one way, and then now it's kind of shifted a little bit. So I would expect to hear from Jeremy last of those three.
It would make for a very, very jammed backcourt, as we've been talking about a good bit throughout the season. You start to look ahead, Roach, Proctor, Jared McCain, and Caleb Foster, trying to figure out how in the world you kind of divvy those things up.
And what happens to Blakes and Shoot, right?
Correct.
I mean,
they would like to play too, and then you've got more wings out there that want to be factored in. And so we'll see what decisions are made from those guys. I do think Derek Lively II declares. I'm there with you. Filipowski's the really interesting one to me. It almost feels like I've started to be of the opinion I'm not going to be surprised at all if we get I want to declare for the NBA draft while maintaining my eligibility to come back from Flip, right? Because you can do that, Josh, as folks may or may not be aware of. You can go and kind of get more feedback and then ultimately say, I'll stay, or actually let me go back to school.
Yeah, and absolutely. And really, he should probably do that. Yeah, he should do that. If you're even in that first round ballpark, you should go do that. I'm just hoping selfishly that he's telling John and the staff that, I'm going to go get the feedback. I want to see how I grade out, but I'll be back. I just want to see what I have to do. I would love because you could be, kind of like last year, we really kind of had that, that loyalty for Keels, for Trev to figure it out. And then he kind of goes all the way, which he can, that's his right to be able to do that. But if you're a coach now, well, now you're kind of scrambling in the portal. Thank God for Tyrese Proctor to be able to come in. Who knows where we would have been without that. But it's just a different landscape. So timelines are very tricky. You're already getting, Tyler Nickel just committed to Virginia Tech, I believe, from Carolina. These things are happening fast. So hopefully there's a little bit of back channel communication going on between, and I'm sure there is, but he's got a decision to make, man. He's got a decision to make. So if I would just caution Duke fans on getting too antsy, and I lean towards what you say. If I was him, the smart decision is to go get graded, go work out, go through the process, talk to some folks, and then make the most educated decision you can.
Yeah, from there, we'll see what Filipowski decides to ultimately do. Of course, a big decision coming. We will add in, people love following these guys on social media. Tyrese Proctor had a post after Mark Mitchell's decision saying we ain't done yet. Like, not much for Mark Mitchell, but Tyrese more so saying there could be more coming because we're not done. So read into that however you will, Duke fans. That's for sure. So, well, Josh, it's always an absolute pleasure to have you here with us on the program. The Devil's Den podcast, most recently, episode 179. You guys had a postseason post-mortem, and you had a real good recap of the year. Tell me a little bit about it and where people can find your work.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. And we're lucky to have you on one time as well. So the Devil's Den podcast, you can find us on all your major platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever. Maybe one day we're thinking about maybe getting on the YouTube train. Not quite there yet. But over the off season, it's a little bit different for us. So we're kind of taking a couple days off, couple weeks off here, really trying to line up some guests. So we got some things in the work. We're really trying to get some alumni, really trying to get some of the coaching staff, some players on, but they're still finishing up their stuff. So probably a little bit later in that regard. But yeah, man, it's always a blast, talking to Shu and Raul and all of us Duke fans have been following recruiting for 15 years or so now. And it's just just thankful for the platform. So yeah, check us out, the Devil's Den podcast, thedevilsden.com. You can email us at devilsdenpod@gmail.com.
Josh, appreciate you stopping by. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me.
All right. That's Josh Smith from the Devil's Den podcast joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. That's going to do it for our program today. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Your support means the absolute world. Follow us on Twitter at @LO_Blue Devils. And I'm on Twitter at @JJ_Jackson_. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.